meant to be a short. What gets me is that Klansman punching is just nothing more than the shorthand of the good German, but violent.
Still have not seen The Good German.
I'm just saying the good German. Personally, it's a trope like the good white person.
There's really basically, it's funny too. There's this conversation around abolitionists and how so many of them were also virulently racist, but just drew the line at owning people. So you've got a bunch of racists who owned people, and then racists who said, quite good.
Like I don't have the responsibility. I don't want the responsibility of actually caring for this person.
Yeah, but then you have people will bring up John Brown. Of course, was
John Brown was a 1 in a billion, and that's why people always bring him up. He's an exception that proves the rule. Once again, # John Brown did nothing wrong.
John Brown absolutely did nothing wrong. Also, had he gotten into a position of power, he could have had the potential to have been a religious despot as well.
Yeah. People really, it's like on one hand, John Brown is awesome. On the other hand, John Brown was very hyper religious, y'all. Y'all need, I mean, God knows he was appreciated, but he actually serves better as a symbol and a martyr. I hate to say that about the man, but he does.
It was his purpose in life, and he served it to a T. And I love the people who still try to. There's the lost causers who still try to play him as a terrorist.
A terrorist. I'm like
killing people. I'm like, Kansas was literally in civil war in their own state. He was killing people for war. It's not like you signed up for the Kansas Army. You fucking showed up and you did.
You showed up. You killed people on the other side, and that's what happened. I mean, honestly, listen, everybody was killing everybody. There's a reason why it was called Bleeding Kansas. Everybody had a little bit of, everybody got their licks in.
Pretty much. Now,
everybody got their licks in. So I need people to realize that the John Brown is a terrorist. The only reason some of those people got killed was because of his own fucking incompetence. He wasn't some of the people on his own side got killed because of his own fucking incompetence. And honestly, shit happens, bro.
And, it's not like he was trained as he did this as a fucking hobby.
Yeah, man, it's like, oh yeah, no. What do I do? I preach the Bible. I preach a hyper intense version of the Bible, and I kill slaveholders. Yeah, that's what I do. Fuck long walks on the beach, motherfucker. This is what I do.
Speaking of someone's hobby getting them killed, let's move to the Titan.
I should not have laughed.
Speaking of slavery, let's also move to the Titan. Because
shouldn't have laughed.
Because Mr. Fucking something Rush. What the fuck was his first name?
Sheldon Rush?
Something. What's his face?
Sheridan. Yeah.
Sheridan Rush has his family came into their fortune in a very I'm sure you can probably see where it's coming, but
no, I am on the edge of my seat, Ren. I'm on the edge of my seat.
He was named after two ancestors of his who were signatories to the Declaration of Independence, and given the era from whence they came, I'm sure you can imagine where the fortune that he was born into came from.
Well, then I need to find out what routes of slave ships passed over. And as the internet said, any Mer Negroes decided that they needed a family reunion impromptu. I said what I said.
Now, after the last episode, I made light of the situation. The idea of, billionaires dying, I don't care. Found out that there was a 19-year-old.
That's the only person I literally feel sorry for. He did not want to go, but it was Father's Day, and like many people people of that age from that part of the world, when your parent asks you to do something, you do it. It is not negotiable. That's the thing. That's the thing with the South Asian culture. If your parent says do it, there's no non-negotiable. I mean, South Asians and Jamaicans have both been colonized by Britain, but many of us as Jamaicans look at South Asians and go, "You're not saying nothing." If you know on go, don't go. If your spirit not take you to go, then don't go. Basically, if it had been a Jamaican, that 19-year-old would have been sitting on the boat, probably crying after being backhanded, but sitting on the boat waiting.
There's the more extreme people are saying something like, he's 19 years old and he would have been the scion to, a family that owned sweatshops. My response to that is, all the same, he's a 19-year-old. And human beings, their brains do not finish developing until they're about 25.
Yeah. Scaffolding's still on that shit. Well, was on that shit.
There's a difference between being in the position to inherit something awful and doing awful things. If this 19-year-old were a rapist, for example, I'd be like, well, rapist, and I'm glad he's dead.
Nothing of value was lost. But it's the fact that
who had the potential to be a horrible person had not self-actualized that yet. And it's like, if there is a line to be drawn, you can draw it somewhere. I don't think it's there. And I think it's really horrible that this kid died. And I say it on purpose because I know he's legally an adult, but it's all the same.
But I understand why you said kid, because while I would not lean into the semantics of kid, but I do understand at least I understand in a different way. I understand culturally that he really didn't have as much of a choice as as one would think as one would think a 19-year-old would have.
So I feel bad for him and him alone.
Yeah, everybody else can kick rocks.
Yeah, it's really the compassion fatigue that comes from just in general. I know all lives are precious, blah 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 blah. That's something that people who don't actually believe that fucking say.
No, they don't,
because there's a specific kind of life that they find compassion for, and it's for dead billionaires. And I just don't care.
Dead billionaires and missing white women.
My God, we're still hearing about Natalie Holloway all these years later.
Meanwhile, Black women are still vanishing, and women like Lauren Fields, their probable killers are free. AJ Owens. They're not going to charge the woman with manslaughter. They're going to charge her with murder. People are upset about it, but I understand it's Ocala. They are charging her with what they think they can get her on, which is sad. But welcome to hell, aka Florida.
And now that the Supreme Court has eroded again some indigenous rights in this country,
it's like six steps. It's like 6 steps forward, 5.5 back.
Yeah. Man, Gorsuch is fucking weird. I'll get to that later. He's just
I didn't understand why. On one hand, yay, you preserved ICWA. Good. Maybe, and then the Supreme Court does show that to a degree, public bullying works. To a degree.
To the extent that they are afraid that there might possibly be some complications in their lives that make it a little bit more difficult to be absolute shit zippers.
Yeah. Bullying. I mean, some public bullying occasionally works, because we just saw what happened. They rejected that stupid cockamamie theory. Listen, if you have fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger taking time. Yes. I mean, I wasn't going to say it, but I mean, which is the best the Republican Party can do. It is. if he's out here filing amicus's brief saying this theory is stupid, this theory is openly stupid, and you made me write a 39-page amicus brief telling you it was stupid, how dare you? Like, if we got, they had, I'm not saying that they had to, because they could have, but I think what it is the Fed Soak said, you know what, we're just going to lay down on this one for a while.
I think
I said it.
I think I have a theory that the Supreme Court understood the unintended consequences of such a decision, because one of the things that their decision could do if they recognize the idea of the independent legislature is that legislatures in states which are huge and democratic could offset. California could legislate red districts out of existence.
Yeah, they could literally just partition Orange County, the Inland Empire, and say, "Bitch, you don't exist anymore."
I would be less concerned about New York, because New York Democrats are.
They don't know what they're. Listen, the only thing more weird, more collywampus than the New York Democrats are Florida Democrats. I said it.
I don't think that the DeSantis reelection needed to be as bad as it was.
It really didn't.
There's no reason that Democrats had to abandon that state and leave. Now, granted, I don't really like Charlie Crist, but
no one actually likes Charlie Crist. That's the thing. No one actually likes the man. We just tolerate him. Even when he was a Republican, we tolerated him. Now as and what cracks me up is I can totally see Francis Suarez falling in the same direction. Like,
whenever you mention him, I'm going to follow up with the same who.
AKA,
and by the way, I'm not saying that just to be condescending and insulting. I'm not saying that as the comment section person who says on every celebrity they don't like who. I'm saying it took me 3 weeks to remember his fucking name.
Only reason I remember his name is because I'm from there, and he went to a high school that was a rival to mine.
I still can't remember the name of the North Dakota governor that's also running.
Doug something.
Yeah, okay, Doug. Okay, good. I'll probably remember his first name now.
Doug something. The last name escapes me.
Who cares?
But, I mean, really, that dude gonna vanish like a fart in a rainstorm. Ain't nobody gonna remember him.
Like Native American women in his state because.
No!
I have a lot of hatred for these horrible Northern governors. Not that Democrats are any better about the issue. I'm just like,
yeah, you just made me lose an eyelash. You just made me lose my eyelashes, bruh. I nearly lost my. I just about lost my eyelashes on that. You made me lose my eyelash on that.
Pro-life and freaking pro-law and order pieces of shit don't care about any of it, and
they really don't.
At the very least, now, granted, Democrats suck, I know, but I think there's a certain level of caring Democrats can be pushed into doing.
Facts.
And Republicans could never be pushed into.
Because I'm gonna be honest, I have a feeling if a group of indigenous women decide to have a sit down with John Tester about missing Native, and he would at least clear his calendar, have the sit down, and maybe make a remark about it. I mean, God love John Tester, but that is you. I think you could count on if a group of indigenous women decided they wanted to speak to Senator Tester about the missing and murdered indigenous women and Two-Spirit people. I have a feeling he'd at least hear them out. Would he do anything about it? Bitch, I don't know. But would he at least hear them out? Yeah.
I think that's basically the Democratic Party to a T. I do hate the discourse around the idea that, Democrats and Republicans are the same. And I'm like, to a significant degree on issues, there are many issues in which they absolutely are the same.
Yes.
But there's also a significant number of issues where their differences are such that Democrats are the only safe choice, because Republican or Democrat, the leadership of this country and the legislature of this country is going to happen to us regardless of what we do. So we have to try to steer it in a direction that causes the least amount of harm. And Democrats, for as much as they suck on so many issues, on Native American rights, or giving a shit about so many things, or foreign policy, or all sorts of things,
at least know that they are not going to be out to hurt me. They are not going to be intentionally out to hurt. In other words, one party doesn't give a shit but isn't intentionally out to hurt me, while the other party doesn't give a shit and is actively out to hurt me.
Well, I take criticism of Democrats very easily, because it makes sense. But when someone says it's not worth voting for them or something like that, it's
I'm looking at, I'm sorry, I live in Florida, and way too many Democrats looked and said, I don't feel like voting. Bitch, we did that. And you want to know what happened? We basically had to throw ourselves at the mercy of the courts for drag performers to not be arrested. We had to throw ourselves on the mercy of the courts for people to get gender affirming care. I'm tired of throwing myself at the mercy. I'm tired of watching people I care about, I work with, and I work for, throwing themselves on the mercy of the courts to exist. That shit is fucking exhausting.
No one's saying, for someone who feels this way, that you have to fundraise for Democrats. That you
really don't.
That you have to show up and door knock. But voting, if you have the privilege of being able to vote conveniently, fucking do it.
Please, we are tired. Lord knows how much time you go, if you live in a shitty neighborhood that you have to wait for 5.5 hours and it's a whole day's work. I mean, for me, voting is a lot easier than it should be, but it's easy for a reason. I'm lucky enough to be in a precinct where voting can either be done at a large, conveniently located area that is in and out in 25 minutes to an hour and a half, which is what most people would call reasonable. Or I could wait and do it on the day of, walking distance. Like I'm a fucking Australian, except I don't get a fucking hot dog at the end. We need to work on that. We should be getting glizzies for votes. The glizzy vote is untapped, and we need it. I know in Georgia, you're not allowed to do it, but glizzies, votes, make it happen.
I just learned that there's a town in Australia called Yass. So about that.
I'm just like, I like the idea that it's called Yes, because I know they probably are some backwater town and do not want to be publicized. And next thing you know, hordes of young Kiki age gays just stopping at the town sign going, yeah.
It's funny you say that, because the reason I found out they existed is because I love this game called City Skylines. It's a game, and I watch some YouTubers who make their own cities and City Skylines, because that's my life. And one of them is making an Australian-based city. He's from Australia, I think.
Okay.
And he said, "Oh, this is based on a town called something or other. I don't even remember." So I went to look up where this place was, and as I'm zooming in, I see Yass, and I'm like, "What?" So I look it up on Wikipedia, and it turns out that Queer Eye filmed an entire thing in Yass, just because their name was Yass. So it's already happened.
Oh, okay, all right, good. So in other words, every so often, some enterprising gay traveler just stops because they know what they were informed.
Nice. Yeah, every once in a while, there's a tourist that shows up in the town, and the locals.
We doing this? Like, no, we doing this again. We doing this again, mate. Oh God. All right, everybody, get your glitter on. We doing it again.
Brilliant. So I damn, where were we?
We were in Australia, but before that, we were talking about voting and the fact that that voting shouldn't, once again, and that comes from the fact that the parties are not the same, despite the fact that cynics would have you believe otherwise, and sometimes, and the fact that people in Florida stayed the fuck home when they really, really shouldn't have, and now here we are.
There's an element of wanting to blame Democrats for everything that goes wrong, thinking that Democratic presidents have all the power in the world, and yet I hear this criticism.
I'm sure you do.
Where people will say that Barack Obama squandered
the fuck he did. Even listen, I remember both of us remember being on the ground during that, and I will never forget how many people acted like Obama was fucking all powerful and was running roughshod over the rights of free people.
I remember the people on the left who are criticizing Obama now and saying, and it's true that he campaigned on codifying Roe and then said it's not a priority. It's absolutely true he said that. And he shouldn't have. And he should have pushed. But all the same, they say now, I've heard it, and it's misinformation at this point. They're saying that he had, quote, a 60-vote majority in the Senate. He had it for like 2 fucking days.
Yeah, that was not enough time to do all the things.
I can't remember how short or how long it was. I think it was a couple months. But all the same, there were absences on the Republican side, and almost all of his first term, he had 58 to 59 Democratic votes. You need 60, a solid 60 to break cloture.
And let's be honest, Mitch McConnell was still leader then, wasn't he?
He was the minority leader.
That man would have chiseled you out of bed himself.
Well, that was,
to get you to vote against a codifying of Roe. He would have
immediately began filibustering with Biden because he never had, except for this period, this like window of about a month or maybe 2, where he had 60 votes. Now you could say, well, he had that window. The fact is, he does not control the legislature. And that was a time when you had the Blue Dog Democrat caucus and you had conservative Democrats.
Yeah, those were still a thing. Those are still a thing.
I think, maybe Obama could have pushed the legislature, but he would have not God as much as Republicans like to pretend that he was some sort of dictator.
Antichrist. All I know is that the Blue Dog, if he even breathed on codifying Roe, the Blue Dog Democrats would have, without a doubt, caucused with the Republicans, and it would have been over. So I really can't. The fact that he even got the Affordable Care Act passed is still kind of a miracle in and of itself.
And with healthcare costs spiraling and out of control, we are, of course, the only place where the people of the country see the effect of that, because everywhere else
they're shielded.
Instead of, by the way, other countries still have wealthy people that can take $250,000 trips to go basically doing tourism at paupers' graves at the bottom of the sea. But all the same, those countries get to have universal or some form of partially socialized healthcare, and so there's that. And getting off topic, but it just bothers me. But
it's one of those things that it's one of the things that Some would said a socialist is a liberal with a chronic illness. And I'm like, as someone with a chronic illness, I'm like, I could 300% see that. Yeah. Nothing brings out the inner socialist quicker than getting a chronic illness. Nothing.
You know what's sad is the very idea that, granted, it may be in the name, but the idea that socialized healthcare is inherently a socialist idea when it's fucking not. It's socialist in the sense that a fucking fire department is socialist.
Yeah. And what I think it is also, this is going to sound, it sounds like I'm going to be linking a bunch of disparate ideas here, but if you've ever read I think I've mentioned it. I mentioned it 1,000 times on Twitter, but not necessarily here. There is a book by a man named Jonathan Weitzel called Dying of Whiteness.
You've mentioned it to me, and I put it on my list and haven't read it.
I'm going to tell you right now, once you read it, you're going to look at everyone a lot differently, and you'll find that it is a lot easier to be like, the reason this is not happening is because white people don't want black people. White people don't want non-white people to have a goddamn thing.
Somebody wants everybody, quite a lot, horrifyingly, a lot of people want someone on the ladder below them.
Yeah. It's the idea that there are people walking around on the internet who actually believe that Jesus would have killed or harmed homeless people. And I'm like, hold up. You are trying to tell me that like a late 20s, very early 30s, houseless, couch surfing. Let's be honest. Let's call a thing here. He did the equivalent of couch surfing. The way those houses were built, you could build a little rooftop apartment and have a bunch of niggas crash on your roof. He was doing that. Okay? And this is a couch surfing itinerant who's like basically doing what we see the dudes that we see in the Home Depot parking lot, waiting for a gig to help build a house. The man was a carpenter. So he's got like 12 of the motherfuckers with him, ranging in age. People also forget that people didn't live that long. People got married super young. People were considered adults at super young ages. So we're talking about like 15 to 25-year-olds. So you got like a 20-something-year-old guy who's houseless, running around with 15 to 25-year-olds with hangers-on that include survivors of trauma, people with mental health crises, sex workers, both former and active, single moms, widows. Basically, this man was running around first century Roman Palestine with a bunch of people the Republicans would have legislated against. And you want me to believe this dude would have killed homeless people? Are we sure about that?
All I hear is that you sound like one of those radical defund the Romans activists.
I probably would have been an ex-sex worker doing all sorts of random shit that would have probably gotten me in trouble, gotten me talking tos. I probably would have gotten myself killed at least 3 times. But I'm just saying, he's running around making the upper class, both religious and secular, nervous. And you think he would have gone around killing homeless people and being cruel to the least of these?
Imperial lives matter.
Because thus saith the Lord. Is this really what we doing today, Twitter? Is this really what we doing today, church? Is this really it? This is not it. This is not the tea, sir.
If he had just obeyed the law, he'd have had nothing to fear.
And now I understand why so many people say, "Oh, Dr. Cone is so was such a radical." No, the man was right. Jesus was a victim of state-sponsored violence. He was a victim of state-sponsored violence.
If the sandal fits.
He was a victim of state-sponsored violence.
I mean, kind of, yeah. You have to wonder when you see states making it illegal to feed the homeless, like, you're just putting... Man, do you not see
where this is going?
That just... This is not... Putting people in jail for feeding the homeless. There's so many parallels.
Yeah, someone did that a couple of years ago, and I'm just sitting here like, is this really what we doing today? So yeah, and I mean, and right now we're all dealing. Right now, New York is is praying that they don't get bad publicity off of this Marine who kills this homeless guy who's going through mental health challenges that the state has basically, that the state has made a mess of this man's life, and then as a final indignity, this is what you gonna do? Okay, all right.
You know, it's someone has pointed this out before. It's not an original thought, but it does need to be repeated.
Sure.
People like me, people like you, we have the luxury of having a mental health crisis behind closed doors.
Facts.
And I know that as a teenager, I definitely had an episode very similar to his. I know that as a teenager, I remember going through some shit and being, and you know, that's the thing about any kind of depression, which was what I was dealing with. I know he was dealing with, I believe, schizophrenia and other issues. And for him to have those issues and the trauma compounding them of all his other life circumstances, he is forced to have his mental health
breakdowns in public.
And for that to be a death sentence, and for people to say, hell yeah, I'm not going to say the guy's fucking name.
Yeah, they're going to say that man was a hero. They out here talking about this man's a hero. This man saved life. I'm like, who was this? Who was Jordan Neely planning on hurting?
What's sad is even the witness statements of people who supported the murder, basically, even they do not say that he was a threat to anyone.
They just were found him to be... He scared people, and he was found to be a nuisance. God knows damn. God knows, being a nuisance and poor and black in public can get you killed. Like, I'm waiting for that to happen in Florida because I know that our government, I know that that Ron DeFascist will support him. Will support them.
Well, now
that's not even a question.
Let's go to Florida for a minute here and talk about to the starring role in Florida fuckery today is Rick Scott, who,
oh my God,
like
Voldemort.
I can't see Rick Scott without just look. If your head's shaped like that, you need to wear like a toupee, unless
I don't know, because then
about looking like a penis.
No, because the thing is, then he's gonna look like that dude from Gerald's Game, and nobody wants that.
Man, that was a great fucking movie.
It was a good movie. That was a good ass movie. All I know is that I admit it did and didn't make the BDSM community look bad. I'm just like, all I know is it said one thing to me: this shit ain't for amateurs.
I mean, also he was, abusive and doing everything.
It was a lot.
I mean,
like a lot of Stephen King things.
The movie downplayed the abuse that the husband was responsible for.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Mike Flanagan, just as an aside, Mike Flanagan is a genius. I have seen.
I'm still mad at him for Doctor Sleep. I'm sorry. I think that I don't like the ending. I'm sorry. He should have stuck with the book. I said what I said.
He had the unenviable position of marrying a sequel to a movie that was nothing like a book, and an adaptation of a book that was a sequel to a book. I think he did a great job, and I think the movie was nigh perfect.
Like I said, I'm gonna give him credit for what he got, the performance he got out of Jacob Tremblay. That was painful, hurtful, and disgusting. No one had a good time. That's usually when people leave, and I understand why he said that, because I'm sorry, that young man sold that. I'm like, no, baby. Oh no, they hurt. Oh no, either. I'm like that's either some great
to be an incredible actor.
I'm like, that boy turned in like the rent was due. Like the rent was due. His mama was already on the streets and the sheriff was at the door. All right. That boy turned it in.
Turned out to be a really great actor is Jacob Melling.
I don't know who that is. Oh God.
Harry Potter's brother. Dudley.
Dudley Dursley.
Yeah.
I have only seen portions of one Harry Potter film, and luckily I was not forbidden Harry Potter, because by the time it came out, my parents realized it was dumb to forbid me shit. I just wasn't interested in Harry Potter, and now I get to be kind of smug about it, but not overly.
He played Edgar Allan Poe in this movie called The Pale Blue Eye.
Oh, that's on Netflix. That's been in my queue for a hot minute. Okay.
Because he plays Edgar Allan Poe in it, and Harry Melling, I think, or something. Jacob Melling. Harry Melling.
I'll give young man a shot. Like I said, but still, Jacob Tremblay gave us a performance like the rent was past due, and it was painful, and nobody had a good time. Which is, if you are a child portraying a child's death in a horror film, nobody's supposed to have a good time when your carrot exits.
I'm just saying this is spoiler alert for Dr. Sleep. If you haven't seen it, skip the next 60 seconds. But I loved it especially because Rose the Hat reminds me of an ex of mine, and getting to watch her die horribly is very
I love the actress that plays Rose the Hat. She also did a one. I admit, every time I see like the true form of a character, I'm like, it was close enough. It's the reason I'm waiting to see somebody adapt The Library Policeman. I need somebody to adapt The Library Policeman. I don't know if I trust Mike Flanagan with The Library Policeman, but I could see him doing an absolutely excellent job with The Library Policeman. And I'd like Lady Gaga to play Ardelia Lortz.
Well, Mike Flanagan's bag is human trauma, abuse, Michael's, and I think that
The Library Policeman would be his shit then.
So I would honestly love to see him do a better version of Hearts in Atlantis, like a version that's actually good.
Yeah, because nobody does that shit.
Or Low Men in Yellow Coats, I think, was the story from the book, and I think that he could marry the stories that are based on that character rather than just the first. I think he could make something really great out of that.
Like I said, I'd like to see what he does with The Library Policeman, and honestly, Lady Gaga as Ardelia Lortz would be everything.
I'm waiting to see what happens with the Dark Tower with him, because after they said, "Oh, there's going to be a Dark Tower movie," I'm like, "Oh, well, it's good." I mean, lately the Stephen King adaptations have been good, so this might.
Yeah, they have.
Like, oh, it's going to have Idris Elba as the gunslinger. This could be. Oh, you fucked it up.
It wasn't as good as it coulda, woulda, or should have been. I'm mad about it. I like, honestly, but you want to know something? You know who I I keep going back to the library policeman. I still would like to see Rachel True as Naomi.
Why? Why, oh, why did. So, Rachel True, holy shit, fucking Half Baked and The Craft, and then poof. And that makes me sad.
Like I said, I love Rachel True. I follow her on Twitter. She does all that. She does the guest judging on Dragula. She's there. It's just the thing with being black in horror, you just end up kind of being a flavor for a while, and you know, maybe there's a point I think she just was tired of being a sidekick. And what cracks me up is the fact that they had a whole craft reunion and they only invited her at the last minute because the fans were like, where Rachel at? And then she showed up and she still looked literally the same. Like she didn't age. And this woman is 50.
I mean, I can't say it, but we all know the saying. So
Black don't crack, fam. But then again, she's vegan. So that also helps. Like, black don't crack. Yeah, that can be true, but she's vegan and she, you know, exercises, meditates, smokes weed sparingly, and, you know, is generally doesn't let shit bother her. So I mean, and minds her own business.
Irish age well for like 50 years and then fall off a fucking cliff.
Oops. Oops. Like, fam, I mean, many of us have just enough Irish to keep it interesting. It's like we took the 50 years and the melon and just doubled it, like, depending on how much you were given.
So I have to wonder, I'm going to have to ask RFK if you're mixed race, how that Irish or how that Chinese race-based bioweapon.
Listen, RFK, I feel bad for, you know who I feel bad for? Trey Kennedy, who's like Joseph Kennedy the third or some shit. Like, I feel bad for that Kennedy. Like, this is the Kennedy that was most likely to return to politics. Now I think RFK just ruined everything. And what cracks me up is the only other person who was active in politics as a campaign worker was working for Pete Buttigieg, which absolutely seems weirdly appropriate. Sorry, it does. It's like, you work for the gay version of like Kennedy rather than, okay, that's fair.
God, there's just when he came out, like, I know he says a lot of stupid shit, but when he came out with that whole idea that Chinese is developing a race-based bioweapon, I thought, you know what? You take all the time you need to figure out how fucking stupid that is.
I just was like, your dad is probably locking himself in his mansion in heaven and not talking to no goddamn body right now. You have basically ruined that man's afterlife. You have not ruined his life. You've ruined his afterlife. Ain't no coming back from that.
Look, I am not a scientist. I did well in biology in high school.
I think everybody did.
But I mean, I'm talking like at the end of the year, my average was 102.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna take that big.
Not so great at chemistry, but pretty great at biology. Pretty great, you know, with the concept of, I mean, just the entry level stuff.
Yeah, I did okay in chemistry, but once I got to them Fibonacci numbers, I was in love. It was over. I thought chemistry was amazing at the level I was at.
And so, despite my relative ineptitude with chemistry, when he starts saying things like, well, he was talking to whoever it was, and I caught him in a lie because he said there was 2 types of mercuries, and that's not true. I'm like, no, it is. There's like literally the fucking element, compound, everything depends on the context it's in. Like, there is literally a type of mercury that is better than the other.
Yeah.
If it's going to be, and like, he was confusing just the entire concept that mercury in one state can be dangerous and mercury in another isn't so dangerous. And if you are going to try to talk from a position of some sort of authority on this, you can't get basic shit like this wrong. But it doesn't matter. The people who listen and watch are going to eat it up. I'm of the opinion now that there's no point in debating vaccines because that is an area. There's just a lot of things you can debate. A lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
But vaccines
Means people are going. Yeah, people have embraced their own internal dogma regarding vaccines, and they're not going to change their mind on it. And fighting somebody about goddamn vaccines is it's just an invitation to put your head through masonry in creative configurations. It's really just, it's not a good time for anybody. Listen, all I usually tell people is this. The moment I knew the corona vaccine worked was when I saw white people trying to scheme their way into neighborhoods they had no business being in just to get the vaccine. The fact that they schemed their way into getting the vaccine rather than letting the people who actually live there get access first, like they should, told me, yeah, that shit works.
I definitely appreciate it. It seemed like there was thankfully a lot of talk when people were finally talking about, vaccine hesitancy. At least it seemed like some of the pundits who I were afraid were going to say something really stupid, at least understood and said, well, I can understand why there's hesitancy in marginalized populations about vaccines. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we're finally acknowledged historically that we just experimented on people. Okay, great. So I get that. But they did nothing with that kind of realization. They did nothing to try to change.
No, they did. They did nothing in saying, you know what, we need to have a conversation about things we did to not just the fucking Tennessee experiment, but what we did to Puerto Rican and indigenous women regarding birth control, what we did, Mississippi appendectomies. We really need to have a conversation with ourselves into how we treated non-white people in our pursuit of medicine. So because Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy are probably not sleeping, or probably will never sleep well in their graves as long as we pretend that their contributions, the contributions of their pain and suffering were yeah.
Have you ever heard of Edgewood Arsenal? It was this army base around the sort of area of Baltimore.
Vaguely heard the name. I vaguely heard the name.
I think it was.
I vaguely heard the name. What dumb shit did the U.S. military do there?
A significant amount of exposure to harmful chemicals to the soldier stationed there, and it's not a coincidence that this base was located where it was, and that's where the experimentation was done. And you don't need to have a smoking gun memo that says, okay, we're going to do all the experiments here where most of the soldiers are statistically likely to be marginally. It's not a secret what our government has done. And I think more outreach needed to be done and more attempts to reckon to try to get levels of vaccine participation up. And we didn't do the work as a government.
We really didn't. What it is also just knowing the fact that the moment it appeared that people of color, indigenous people, Black people were getting the brunt of the coronavirus, it was like a switch flipped and people stopped caring. And people were like, you know what? I want to go to Applebee's. I want to go to my hairdresser. I want. And it's like, okay, so what happened to stop the spread? Man, fuck niggas, basically.
Spring break. I mean, what are you going to do?
So it's like, okay, I get it, and I mean, right now I do work a position where, at least because I'm in close contact with so many people. Oh no, I wear a mask because luckily no one said anything yet. One person said something and I said, well, listen, my father is a recent donor recipient. My brother survived cancer. I didn't say the fuck I look like, but I basically strongly implied the fuck do I look like.
I'm just sorry. I got a fucking text from Adam Schiff and his campaign. I'm like, let me tell you something, Adam. The amount of fucking texts I get from Democrats, I wanted to censure you.
For me, it's more like, okay, I know that it's that time of year. Let me see. Did I get a text from Adam Schiff? No. You know what? I'm okay with that.
The thing is, I get texts from John Fetterman, and I want texts from John Fetterman, and basically, when you're signed up for texts from one fucking
Democrat, you get them all, and you're like, I just wanted John Fetterman and Pete. What the fuck, bitch?
I'm not in it for the Democratic Party. I don't give a shit about you fucking people. I just want to, that brings us back.
You're like, I just want to know what my favorite ogre is up to.
Yeah.
What my favorite senatorial ogre is up to. And I just want that. I don't want nothing else. I just want to know what beloved Bald Lurch is doing.
He's more like the gentleman from Buffy.
I haven't.
You have to have seen a picture of those fuckers. But that's Rick Scott. He's the gentleman from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Look it up. I don't know how to put up a thing on here. But we're talking about his, plan. And Trump also said this too. Like, we will stop immigration from communists and socialists. This blah, blah, blah. And
I'm like, do you not know that
the socialists shouldn't be allowed in Florida, which, dude.
Hate to break it to you. First of all, y'all, so you're basically saying that the Nazis and the neo-Nazis that are there are cool. Second of all, you do know that the Norwegians, that a group of people that Donald Trump is dying to have in this country, you do understand how their country works, right?
Well,
they ain't coming here. They're like, bitch, y'all don't even have universal health care. Y'all still got guns. What the fuck?
They're fine.
They ain't coming to this ghetto shit.
They're fine with white socialists. But anyway, in a state, where you have Nazis having their little demonstrations outside of Disney World, or as a lot of people on the right say, they're all feds. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Feds are there are a lot of Nazis who are feds. Thank you for fucking agreeing to that.
Yeah, it's like David Duke and Tom Metzger didn't create the concept of ghost skins for nothing, fam. So yeah, okay, they're feds. This changes nothing.
Part of it is like these people have been working the long game with these, saying that we're going to ban immigration from socialists and communists, or socialists and communists shouldn't be in Florida. The long game is trying to take anybody who is to the left of basically Richard Spencer and say, you are a socialist, you are a communist. And let me tell you something. And I the point of this show is that we are former Republicans, or we people who have been divorced from the Republican Party, from conservatism. And it doesn't matter, the people we're talking about will either assume that this is just a lie and we were never Republicans, or just assume that we're socialists and communists. I can tell you, I voted for George W. Bush in 2004. I voted for John McCain in 2008. I did not vote for Obama in 2012. So I voted for Gary Johnson. It was the thing. I
voted for Romney because I was like, oh look, we're trying to be serious in public finally.
So like,
what was wrong with us?
Yeah, I don't. I go through this sort of bona fides every time to illustrate the fact that I'm not some sort of dyed-in-the-wool leftist here. I'm somebody who believes that if an individual wants to, they should be able to hold private property, unlike communists. I'm somebody who believes that people should be allowed to start and own their own business, unlike socialists, like actual socialists. People like Rick Scott maybe they might know intellectually what a socialist or communist is, but that's not their messaging. Their messaging is that anybody who believes in a robust system of protections for people who are on the bottom is de facto socialist.
Socialists. Yeah, it's basically what it is when you come to Miami, you realize that you at first are like, oh my God, it's so diverse. Da, 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 da. Then you realize that there is a different kind of non-meritocracy at work here. You realize that it's not just, oh, okay, I speak Spanish, so I should get ahead. That isn't always a guarantee. You speak Spanish just means that they don't talk about you behind your back to your face in Spanish. That's all that means. That means you're not Cuban, you're not Republican, you're not getting no goddamn where. It's going to be like Salt Lake City, this far and no further.
I just when Rick Scott and when Donald Trump talked about banning communists and socialists, what they are saying is not, I want to ban actual communists and actual socialists. They're saying that if you are not a Republican, you are a socialist and communist. They're calling liberals, and I mean liberals in the sense of ineffectual fucking, like,
your Charlie Crist, your Nikki Frieds. I said what I said. Be mad, stay mad, die mad about it. You know, your resist wine moms that give quarterly to Planned Parenthood and think they're doing something. You know.
I mean, I would rather they do that than not, but yeah.
Yeah. In other words, they're calling them communists. In other words, they are expanding the definition. I don't know where on the ladder of genocide it follows, but let's put it like this. Somebody is gassing up the helicopters. And I know that people in South Florida just understood what the fuck I just said. Someone is gassing up the helicopters.
We're talking about after Pinochet was
yeah, we're talking about tossing liberals out of helicopters, guys.
So it's kind of a thing, and I think that Republicans and conservatives love to talk about the communist body count. You know, their mythical 100 million. And communist regimes have absolutely been responsible for untold horrors. You know, but was slavery communist? Was the expansion of our territory for resources and land and the genocide of Native Americans communist?
Was Red Summer, Wilmington, Tulsa, and other somewhat economics-based strafings and pogroms of Black Americans, was that based out of a communist fervor?
Economic systems are not inherently responsible. People are. However, there is pretty big motivation in capitalism for bodies. And I'm not just saying that because I think that communism is somehow better. I'm not a communist. I wouldn't advocate for communism. I wouldn't like communism.
Nobody would.
I also don't like
I'm kidding.
And I'm talking about them in their purest forms.
Yeah.
And to me, the number of bodies that we as a country have caught in the name of fighting communism, whether it is in Chile, whether it's in Argentina, whether it's in Guatemala, whether it's in we are so very responsible for hundreds of thousands to millions of deaths, because the biggest proxy war against communism, Vietnam.
And somewhere I hope Henry Kissinger felt very uncomfortable.
Why would
we were there because we were supposedly going to create a bulwark against communism in Asia, and that's not what happened.
And all we did was make it easier for Cambodia to develop their own communist dictatorship
Hello, Khmer Rouge.
And yeah, it was a communist state, and yeah, millions died. But it didn't just develop out of nowhere.
It came out of us breaking something to supposedly, theoretically save it. We've been doing
destroyed the Congo because they might be voting for
a possible communist. We've destabilized so many countries because we thought we were under the suspicion. We fucking turned into the Ike Turner of countries. I said it. We did because we thought our bitch might be talking to somebody else, and we weren't going to have that. We turned into the hoe. Don't do it. I'm sorry.
Oh, bless you, Tina.
Tina found that funny. I know that for sure. We became the Ike Turner of countries. You think she left us because she left us and renounced her citizenship for a damn good reason.
Yeah, in a country that has social protections for, the people.
So many social protections. So many.
I mean, whenever you mention that, people like to say, they also have a lot of Nazis in Scandinavian countries. I'm like, they have Nazis here.
Yeah, like
thing.
That's like right now at this point, people like to bring up, oh, Ukraine has Nazis. So do we. God damn it.
Yeah, man. Lady, take a look at our ranks.
Like there's a reason why one of the things that I'm still mad at SecDef Austin for is not bringing back investigating white nationalists in the military. We really could have used that investigation, fam. We really could have.
We need to root out wokeness in the military. Apparently,
no, bitch, we don't. No, bitch, we don't need to root out wokeness. Wokeness ain't stealing weapons. White nationalists are. Tyler from bumfuck Missouri, who thinks that he is doing something out of conviction because he didn't get a tattoo. He didn't get his little 1488 tattoo. Who decided to join the military because that's how he assists in the upcoming race war, and stole a bunch of ammunition. Y'all not looking into him? What the fuck, bruh?
Speaking of which, maybe to end this episode, we'll just note this little thing that Elon Musk artificially deflated and reduced his subscriber count on Twitter to 88.
Okay. Oh, by the way, Twitter this morning, a bunch of users got a thing saying, oh yeah, no, you were suspended for 3 days just violating the spam policy. And then they took that back when I guess they figured out they did too many people. And then more people started talking, and it turned out it was mostly POC BIPOC users that this was happening to. And I'm like, I mean, it's apartheid Clyde. At this point, the 88 subscribers and all this, and trying to throttle BIPOC users, sir, you're obvious here. You're punished?
That's the point.
It's now to the point where he's just like deciding to randomly punish users because we put community notes on ads.
I'll just say this. There's no such thing as an ironic Nazi. If you're doing it because you think it's funny because of the reactions.
Because it's edgy. No, bitch. You actually.
Nazi.
Yeah. Yeah, sir. You're still a Nazi. Please get off my lawn. And because this is Florida, I can't shoot you because stand your ground will not work for me.
It will work for somebody who unloads 30 shots at a pool boy he thought was there, to steal stuff from him.
But that was a white person who did that. Yeah. White people, stand your ground works in Florida for white people.
But if you fire a warning shot at a guy who testified that he absolutely was going to hurt you if you hadn't shot the warning shot, then you go to jail for 20 years.
And the NRA does nothing to help get you out.
Well, that'll be it for us for this week. We will be back next week because I'm assuming things will get worse. So we have to document it. But
I'm sure it'll get worse. It'll get more interesting and worse.
But until then, I'm getting some late breaking news. It looks like Henry Kissinger is still not dead. Maybe he should take a ride
God,
on that submarine. I mean, he's wealthy.
he
enough to
really
do
should.
it. What
Someone
with,
should.
you know,
Yeah,